Placebos. Let's do that one. So this one, people sent us in. It's Linus Tech Tips, if you guys are familiar with the WAN show. WAN After Dark, of course. He's a pretty good tech reviewer on the interwebs. But anyway, they had some pontifications. Maybe I would go so far as to say bloviations of placebo and the general effect of it. So it's a couple minutes long, but let's play.
People and marketing people know it's a grift, or do they just recruit the believers?
I'm sure there's an ability to recruit the believers there. There's also this concept of like, if you tell yourself something enough, you will start to believe it. And if you believe something to a certain degree and people push you on it and you just get defensive, you can like build up a fortress of things that aren't necessarily true, but you might not necessarily even realize it.
Right.
There's a lot of weird things. Like
human brain's a funny
I was talking to Emma about this the other day. The fact that everyone just shrugs off the placebo effect is wild.
Oh yeah, placebo effect is huge.
Like actually one of the most wild things ever.
Like seriously, one of the best things you can do if you like literally get cancer is to just believe that you're going to make it.
Yeah.
Like it's not a guarantee, but the difference that it makes to survival rates to have a positive attitude and think you're going to beat something is wild.
Yeah.
Like wild.
I've also heard warts is a huge one. If you just think about your wart going away, it's like medical science at this point.
That's insane to me. I don't know.
That's like a real thing.
But like so many people will hear about placebo for the first time and just be like,
yeah.
It's like, what?
There's also nocebo. You can't also talk about one without the other one. The negative effects. You think that this medication is going to hurt you, and then it actually hurts you.
Yeah. Even if it doesn't.
Even if it's placebo or fake.
You're just making up that it has negative side effects.
Yeah, exactly.
You
get more warts.
This is why real medical trials need controls and everything needs to be double blind and all of that stuff.
Absolutely.
I was telling Emma, I'm really happy that people do research on this stuff. And to a certain degree, in certain cases, I think it's probably beneficial for me to not know more.
Right.
Okay, I think that's about the majority of their pontifications. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
yeah, I mean that is the alternative medicine narrative that has seeped into, hasn't seeped, it's been pounded into the culture, because that justifies all the bullshit that they sell, right? If you think that the power of your mind alone, you could beat cancer, and all they have to do is say, this helps you heal yourself, right? Whatever bullshit I'm selling you, it's going to help you heal yourself. And look, the mind can heal itself with placebo effect, blah, blah, blah. It is placebo medicine, but it's also complete bullshit. And it's been studied for years, even by people who are trying to prove that it works. You know what I mean? Like that's their goal. Placebo effects do not affect survival, period. Like they just do not affect survival. They will not cure disease. They affect your perception of your illness, right? They affect subjective symptoms. There are non-specific effects. So again, it depends on how you're defining the placebo effect, right? If you're saying anything that happens in the placebo arm of a clinical trial, that's a lot of things, right? That is regression to the mean statistically. It's also that you're in a clinical trial, right? The whole point is you're trying to control for all the variables other than the intervention, like what a surgery,
confounding,
a medication, all confounding factors, right?
Yeah.
Right, so it's like placebo plus treatment minus placebo equals treatment. That's the math of clinical trials. So placebos are everything other than the active intervention. That includes the mere fact that you're in a clinical trial. What happens when you're in a clinical trial? You get regular doctor visits where they evaluate you. They do blood work. You're also, because you're being evaluated, you're more compliant with your treatment. You also get standard of care treatment. They can't withhold standard treatment from you because you're in a clinical trial. So you basically get better medical treatment just from being in a clinical trial, essentially. And you take better care of yourself because you're in a clinical trial. And you may also evaluate your symptoms differently or remember your symptoms differently or whatever, right? There's all kinds of things that happen. And you have to control for all of those things. But if you try to control further for just the mental aspect, just the fact that you're getting treated and just whatever psychological effect that has, that does not affect survival. In fact, when you try to measure an objective physiological effect from that, there isn't one, right? You can't separate it out from all the non-specific but real physical things that happen in a clinical trial. So again, like there was the famous study now, just like the go-to example, and this was performed by people who were promoting like the placebo effect nonsense, where they looked at people who had asthma, right? And they compared a proven asthma treatment to a placebo asthma treatment to acupuncture to no intervention. And they looked at, did the patient feel better? And was their pulmonary function objectively better when you measured it? And they were hoping they were going to show that the placebo effect, when you controlled for it in that paradigm, had a real physiological benefit for asthma. And what they showed was that that the treatment group, the placebo group, and the acupuncture group all thought they were better, above and beyond the no intervention group. But when you measured their pulmonary function, only the real treatment group had an effect. The placebo group, the acupuncture group, and the no treatment group had no effect physiologically, which kind of confirms, what we've been saying about it the whole time. Right? It was a pretty good study, and they to their credit, they did design and execute it well, and it was a large study. Completely destroyed the notion that you're going to get a real physiological effect from just the belief that you're being treated, at least within the context of asthma. You also have to think about this disease by disease, right? Whenever you're talking about pain or nausea, where there is a mind-body connection, then all bets are off, and it's different because you can absolutely talk yourself out of pain. That pain is kind of evolved that way, right? I mean, think about it. Pain's interesting. It's it's a complicated and phenomenologically interesting thing. It's supposed to, it's there to warn you about trauma, right? About injury, so you don't walk on an injured ankle, right? But at the same time, if you really need to, you need to be able to ignore your pain, right? If you're running from a tiger who's going to eat you, then you should be able to run through the pain. Otherwise, you're going to die.
Right.
So there are mechanisms to draw your attention to the pain. And then there are also mechanisms, neurological mechanisms baked into our neurology to help you ignore the pain. And it's all context dependent. And you can sort of trick yourself into ignoring the pain, so many different ways.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change anything physically, right? It doesn't mean that the problem's gone away. It's just that you're distracting yourself from the pain because pain is very distractible, right? But that doesn't mean you're going to survive cancer longer, right? If you look at hard outcomes in placebo trials, the placebo effects don't have any hard medical, physical, physiological effect or outcome. So distilling all that down to, if you just believe you're going to live longer, you're going to live longer. No, you're not. That is not how it works. Yeah. That's actually been pretty clearly demonstrated.